Hi, friends. It's my favorite time of the year. I know a lot of us are in that headspace. We're thinking intentionality, we're thinking planning for the new year, maybe a rebrand, new year, new me. For me, though, my approach this year is going to look a little different than it's looked in the past. So, I want to share how I'm personally choosing to start off 2026 in hopes that it might be helpful. And as I've come to learn more about goal setting and the psychology behind goal setting, and most importantly, executing on goals, something I've learned is that we don't all have the same ways of operating or ways that we succeed in accomplishing our goals. And one of the things that I realized about myself is visioning and setting the intentions and creating the goals isn't my issue. I'm actually really strong in that category. My issue is consistency, making sure that I follow through on those goals and make it to the end of the year and accomplish everything that I want to accomplish. So normally what this time of year looks like for me is I'd be really excited, probably be planning a vision board party for me and my friends, and I would kick off the year super strong. I would be following all of my goals to a T, and then I'd have a hiccup. Maybe I'd go back into my full-time job after the holidays or something else happens and it kind of throws off my routine. And once that routine is thrown off, I kind of just slowly drift away from my plan. By the time March comes, what plan? What goals? So as I've learned this about myself, something I've been really focused on is not trying to fix what's not really broken, but instead adapting how I operate to make sure it actually is meeting my needs and helps me be my best self as I already am. So with that said, I'm not focused on fixing motivation this year. Instead, I'm focused on fixing my timeline. This year isn't about big fancy goals for me or even a new vision board. This year for me is about focusing on a few goals that will move the needle in all facets of my life. It's about consistency. Instead of planning all of 2026, I'm focused on just 3 months, 12 weeks, January through March. So you might be wondering, like, where did this approach come from? Why are we switching up our approach? Where are the vision boards? Why aren't you having your vision board party, Amber? Nobody's wondering that, but I was for a second. But in short, this concept comes from a book called 12 Week Year. If you haven't gotten a chance to check it out, I highly, highly recommend it. Even if you don't have time to check out the full book, check out the summary of the book because it's an excellent, quick read. And gives you some really tangible tools. But essentially, the book is focused on, you guessed it, planning out your year in 12-week year increments. So essentially planning it out in quarters. Some of the things the book highlights is the fact that planning out in a 12-week year format as opposed to a full year creates a sense of urgency. So for those of us who are procrastinators, if you know you have a full year to accomplish your goals, it's a lot easier to push everything off until quarter four. And then you're looking and like trying to figure out where the rest of the year went. Sorry, December, we haven't accomplished anything. Okay, now it's time to lock in. No, we're not doing that this year. Another thing I really love about the 12-week year is that it's not focused on the calendar year. You can essentially start your 12-week year at any point in time. Although right now is a great time with it being the new year, you can start your 12-week year at any point in time in the year. So for me, that takes a lot of pressure out of the process. And that was actually how I kind of fell in love with this concept. So I actually learned about the 12-week year shortly after January of last year. And I remember thinking like, dang, I wish I had this when I was making my vision board, planning for my year. Essentially, I was still able to leverage the framework, even though I learned about it later in the year. And I was able to leverage it to help me accomplish some of my goals in 2025. So in realizing for myself that consistency was a bigger issue than visioning, it made a lot of sense for me to pivot into using this model and not focusing so much on my vision board this year. Also, side note, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out my last video, make sure to check that one out. In that video, I break down really common ways that different types of people get stuck on setting and executing on goals throughout the year. So in that video, I talk about consistency being one of the ways that people get stuck. And for me, consistency is the main way that I get stuck. I'll find myself really motivated in January, really motivated early in the year. I'll have a very clear vision of what I want, but for me, where I get really hung up is carrying out on those goals throughout the remainder of the year. When it came to my big picture vision for this year, instead of asking myself what I wanted more of for this year, I had to ask myself and be real with myself. What is it that I really need to follow through on this year? What's already on my plate that I need to maybe just make sure I'm doing a little bit more as opposed to every now and then? So before we get into my focus areas for the year, I do want to share that I have other goals for the year for sure. But My anchor goals are my anchor goals, meaning that these are the goals that are going to keep me going for my 12 weeks and honestly for my entire year. And why I'm calling them anchor goals, these are my priorities that stabilize everything else in my life. When I'm consistent with my anchor goals, the rest of my goals fall into place a lot more easily. On the contrary, when I'm not consistent with my anchor goals, my life is a hot mess, y'all. I've seen this pattern play out over and over again. When I'm exercising consistently and eating well, I have more energy to do the things that I need to do. I'm able to excel in my passion projects and my full-time job, and I'm overall just a better human to be around, right? Another goal that I have for the year is paying off some debt. And when I'm eating better, aka cooking at home and not having Uber Eats every other night, I'm saving money without even really trying to save money. And that money in turn can be used to pay off debt. As you see, it's kind of a domino effect. When you get those anchor pieces right, it just makes everything else fall into place so much easier and so much more clearer. For me this year, instead of stacking a long list of goals, I'm focusing on my foundation first. If I had to sum this season of life up for myself, this season is not about the extremes or going super hard. This season is about consistency. I'm not aiming for perfect days. I'm aiming for completed tasks. I'm aiming for follow through. So here's what that looks like in real life. My boyfriend and I did a joint planning session earlier this week where we focused on our 12-week year. We didn't have any fancy art supplies, any vision boards, anything like that. All we had were these $3 oversized desk planners. We broke those up. We had our January, February, March. So we had sticky notes and we got to work. We mapped out our 12-week year week by week. So what that looks like, every different goal category has a different color sticky note. So for instance, on here, you'll see for me, the gym is pink. There's a gym day every other day for the most part each week. So that's the goal. Why didn't you just write it on the calendar, Amber? That's a great question, friend. Because my focus is on getting the task done. It's not about when I get the task done. Let's say I have the sticky on here for Wednesday night. That'd be great if I go to the gym Wednesday night. But what if I can't? What if something comes up with work? What if I have an appointment that evening? What if it's just not feasible? What if I'm not feeling well? The reason we're using stickies and not writing in on the calendar day by day is to allow space for that flexibility. Whether I go to the gym Wednesday evening or Thursday morning, does it really make a difference for me? No, it doesn't. What matters for me is that I go to the gym. So that's why I'm allowing this flexibility for myself and also acknowledging one of my biggest obstacles is just when I overplan and then life happens, as it always does. Sometimes it's hard for me to adjust, and instead of adjusting, I just fall off the rails. So one way I'm proactively acknowledging that is creating that flexibility for myself. Something that I really like about this setup is that everything is visible. When we talk about micro wins and building up that muscle of consistency, micro wins is one of the best ways to do that for yourself. For instance, if you have a goal of losing, let's say 20 pounds, your micro wins might be just going to the gym 3 times a week for a month. And those micro wins are what are going to get you to your ultimate goal or your ultimate outcome. Seeing those micro wins in real time and seeing me complete them is what really moves the needle for me. And this is the big unlock for me. It's not about rebranding. It's not about becoming a completely different person in 12 weeks or just turning my life upside down or doing a complete 180. No, in the next 12 weeks for me, it's about building the identity of someone who is consistent. I'm reinforcing the identity of showing up consistently, even imperfectly, but still consistently. And that's what matters most to me. So instead of chasing a perfect year, I'm anchoring my year around what matters most and building systems to support me in reaching those goals. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear in the chat what you're focused on for the year, what are some of your anchor goals, and what systems you're implementing to help you reach those goals. Let's stay connected and please stay tuned. I'll be sharing more about my personal journey and also more tips and tricks to help keep us aligned and on track for 2026. Thank y'all.